Hello, Father Rich with you here in the dining room of the Rectory at Our Lady of Peace. Our next session for our series on how the church has changed the world. Again, we're on volume 2 now. This one is called A Map of Mankind. And it starts with the story of a Jesuit priest in the 1580s before the Emperor of China in going to unroll for him a promised map of the world. And so he went to do that, and he unveiled this. Oh, the fathead of the Cleveland Browns. Did they have those back in 1580? No, wrong map. Okay, that's go Browns. They play tonight, Thursday night football. But he unrolled this, the map of the world. And again, you see that he was, the emperor was kind of saddened and surprised to see that China was so little of the rest of the map of the world. And as Matteo Ricci would say to him, fell into a common mistake of humanity to think that their world and their country makes up the whole world and that they are the center of anything. So he was a Jesuit missionary. I'm going to pull you up now. That again was born and raised in Italy. And eventually, after many studies, was well versed again in mathematics, astronomy. He was buddies with that Clavius that we talked about that helped with the calendar with Gregory the 13th. And he would go over to help bring the Christian mission and gospel and good news to the people of China. So he was very well respected because he was so well learned. He had things like clocks and things the Chinese hadn't seen before, these maps, obviously a great knowledge of things beyond, so he had a great respect there. And interestingly, he would walk around in the garments of the people and really try to, we talked about acculturation before, he would really try to make the Christian truth accessible through Chinese concepts and ideas. And he was somewhat successful. And again, well respected. He was never martyred. I think he died in 1610. He was sent there in 1580. He was the only and the first foreigner, and only to that point, to be allowed to walk the, what is it called? The Last Kingdom, the place around. I'm going to go get my book. The Emperor's City, which is just phenomenal. So it shows you what respect they had for him. The Forbidden City. And so he had a chance to go there. He went and studied in one of the Portuguese colonies over there, Mandarin, so was able to speak well in their language. And that was another reason they respected him. And really made the faith accessible to the people. And then eventually obviously made his way to Beijing and to the rest. They mentioned in I was reading a little bit more about him, he's actually a servant of God now. So the cause for his canonization's been opened. They say it's somewhat controversial as to whether he should be beatified, because unfortunately there's politics with it. And the thought is because of this, the efforts to bring the church into China, and we know there's tensions with the church there in China, that if you beatify him, will that heighten those tensions? When, again, the church is essentially not being completely welcomed. And remember, there's a whole Chinese form of the Catholic Church there that's kind of considered somewhat of a compromise to many Catholics. So he wrote things like the treatise on friendship, and he wrote these all in Chinese. A treatise on mnemonic arts, a Chinese translation of Euclid's Element of Geometry. A book of Chinese apologetics was called The True Meaning of the Lord of Heaven, and 10 Discourses by a Paradoxical Man. And in that catechism, he uses concepts from Confucius and other kind of well-respected and ancient thinkers of Chinese, and kind of makes the Christian faith uses their terms to try to understand it. And unfortunately, that ended up becoming a big debate in the church. Particularly the Dominicans and the Franciscans questioned these techniques of the Jesuit missionaries, and Matteo Ricci as being the big one in China. And eventually the Vatican would reject this approach. One of the things they had done was to approve ancestor worship, which is huge in the Chinese Buddhism. And the Vatican, after going back and forth, kind of officially denied that. And that was kind of obviously another difficult and kind of schismatic element of the tension between the church and the Chinese. And then when the communist government took over, that certainly has made it worse. They say even John Paul II canonized the Chinese martyrs in 2000. That was another thing that brought more tension. Here we're, obviously honoring these people that the Chinese government killed. So who knows where that'll go? There was some talk of possibly also beatifying one of the Chinese that worked with Matteo Ricci, and so that you could have a Jesuit, a foreigner, and a Chinese be beatified together to kind of represent. But the questions remain: what would that? Is that a condoning kind of a compromise of the Catholic faith? What does all that mean? So right now, that movement hasn't proceeded. We might be celebrating someday, blessed or Saint Matteo Ricci and some of those companions. But until now, it remains to be seen. And we see some of the challenges that our Christian faith has in trying to enculturate and be relevant to some of these other, religions that aren't monotheistic and at heart. So we have to pray for this. That's kind of where the essay concludes. Yet another reason to turn in prayer to the east to try to hope. And the essay writer, Anthony Esolen, again, he's really hopeful that someday Christianity will take root in China and they'll be able to find a way because they have a great piety and devotion. They have great commitment to order and discipline in China and their way of life. And he's thinking a lot of those things do resonate with us as Christians. So the hope is that someday there could be a greater conversion. So we pray for that. We thank God for the missionaries who were willing to make the efforts to lay the roots for the Catholics that are in China. I think they said that Matteo Ricci, through his time, maybe there was about 2,500 Catholics that were converted or that were living. There may have been more that died as well. You can say that's good or bad, depending on your perspective, but nonetheless, we thank God for the efforts of the missionaries and their efforts to make the faith real. They really emphasize here, too, something that we talked about with St. Junipero Serra a few videos ago, that they really, uniquely, the missionaries, wanted to love the people and love who they were, understand their culture, accept what was good there and celebrate it, and find connections there, and be merciful in the areas that they may have been more primitive or not, kind of having the same kind of Christian values and moral code. And that's certainly something we see. And they say when the anthropologists didn't approach it the same way, when they would try to expand into new territories, they didn't have that same commitment of Christian love. And not, again, that all missionaries were perfect. But that certainly was a big part of Matteo Ricci, to love the people for who they were, and then try to, help elevate their way of life, believing that Jesus Christ is the most full way to live the human life, but yet still meet them where they are on some level. So, again, thanks for joining me today. Have a great day and God bless.